He thought the worst moment of his life would be signing the divorce papers. He was wrong. The worst moment was lifting his eyes in that gray courthouse hallway and realizing the woman he was about to lose forever was carrying a life he never knew existed. The morning felt heavier than winter itself, the kind of cold that settled inside the bones rather than on the skin. Marcus stood in the courthouse hallway gripping a thin folder that somehow weighed more than his entire marriage ever had. The smell of old paper, stale air, and quiet regret clung to the walls. This was supposed to be simple. Clean. Final. A signature, a nod, a door closing quietly behind them. He had rehearsed this day in his head so many times that he believed nothing could surprise him anymore. Then he looked up. Time did something cruel in that moment. It slowed just enough to let the truth hurt more deeply. Standing across the hallway was Alina. Not angry. Not broken. Calm in a way that felt unfamiliar. Stronger than he remembered. And beneath her coat, unmistakable and undeniable, was the gentle curve of 7 months of life. His breath caught painfully in his chest. For a moment, Marcus couldn't move. Couldn't think. Couldn't even feel his feet on the floor. His mind raced through impossible explanations, each one collapsing before it fully formed. This wasn't part of the story he had told himself. This wasn't how endings were supposed to look. Alina met his eyes without flinching. There was no accusation in her expression, no triumph, no bitterness. Just a quiet steadiness that somehow hurt more than anger ever could. Marcus realized in that instant that life had continued without him. Not paused. Not waited. Continued. The shock wasn't just the pregnancy. It was what it represented. Proof that while he had been convincing himself the marriage was over, something far greater had been growing in silence. Something he hadn't noticed. Something he hadn't protected. Their marriage hadn't ended with shouting or slammed doors. It dissolved slowly, like something left unattended for too long. Marcus worked longer hours, chasing stability, believing love could survive on responsibility alone. Alina waited for conversations that kept getting postponed. For presents that never fully arrived. When exhaustion replaced affection, neither of them knew how to ask for help without feeling like they were failing. So they separated quietly. Two polite strangers dividing memories instead of fighting for them. Marcus told himself it was the mature choice. The dignified one. He believed walking away meant avoiding deeper damage. What he didn't realize was that avoidance doesn't prevent pain. It only delays it. Alina had carried the weight of their ending alone. When she discovered she was pregnant, fear threatened to swallow her whole. But she didn't run. She didn't demand. She chose resilience. One step at a time, she rebuilt her life around the small heartbeat growing inside her. That child became her reason to wake up, to endure the loneliness, to believe that even broken stories could still mean something. Marcus, meanwhile, stayed frozen in the past. He filled his days with routine and empty logic. Told himself love fades. Told himself starting over was easier than fixing what was broken. But standing in that hallway, all his carefully constructed beliefs collapsed at once. He wasn't just losing his wife. He was confronting the possibility that he had abandoned the most important role of his life without even knowing it existed. Chapter 2, Hook. The divorce papers were still valid, the pain still real, but something irreversible had already changed. Because once a man realizes the life he walked away from kept growing without him, he can never pretend the same way again. The weeks after the courthouse didn't bring clarity. They brought discomfort. Silence between Marcus and Alina felt louder than any argument they had ever had. Yet, within that silence, something unfamiliar began to take shape. Awareness. Accountability. Marcus noticed things he once overlooked. The way Alina rested her hands protectively over her belly. The tired strength behind her calm. The patience in her movements, earned through nights of fear she had faced alone. Each detail felt like a quiet accusation, not spoken aloud but impossible to ignore. For the first time, Marcus questioned the story he had told himself. Was leaving really strength? Or was it fear disguised as self-respect? That question haunted him. And instead of running from it, he finally stayed with it. He sought help, not to erase the past, but to understand himself. To confront the man he had become when things got hard. He learned that presence requires more courage than provision. That love isn't proven through control, but through consistency. Slowly, painfully, his defenses softened. He didn't try to win Alina back with promises or apologies filled with desperation. He respected boundaries. Offered support without expectations. Showed up quietly. Repeatedly. He listened more than he spoke. Learned to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. Alina noticed. Not because he asked her to, but because change leaves traces. Trust didn't return quickly, and neither of them rushed it. Healing rarely announces itself. It arrives quietly, through effort repeated without guarantee. As the pregnancy neared its final weeks, they stood at a crossroads. The divorce still existed. The past still hurt. Nothing was magically fixed. But something had shifted. What once felt like an ending now felt like a question waiting for an honest answer. Marcus understood something vital then. Love doesn't require perfection. It requires responsibility. Alina understood something just as powerful. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain. It simply refuses to let pain decide the future. When the child finally arrived, the room filled with something fragile and extraordinary. Not certainty. Not resolution. But renewal. Marcus stood humbled, aware that some moments redefine a person forever. Seeing Alina 7 months pregnant on the day of their divorce hadn't been punishment. It had been a wake-up call. Life had offered him a second chance. Not promised. Not guaranteed. But possible. And whether that chance led to rebuilding a family or simply becoming a better man, he knew one thing with absolute clarity. Love is not measured by how tightly we hold on. It is measured by how deeply we are willing to grow.